Bonjour and welcome to Get Undressed with Adele. Today I have a very, very special guest, Becky.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very glad that I'm a part of your new podcast venture.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy to have you on. And I thought, actually, when I started thinking about the podcast, I thought, who would I want to have on the podcast and who do I want to chat with on the podcast about fashion and like our experience with fashion? And I thought, we basically grew up together, you know?
Yes.
And so
it's been a really beautiful journey with us, I think. It was all recommended to tell people the story. I started working with a makeup artist called Wendy Turner, and it's very difficult to find a makeup artist and a hairstylist all in one, and one that can do both very, very well.
Yeah.
And Wendy was perfect, and I think I was having quite some difficulties with stylists as well. It's quite a personal job, and it's a job that an artist or whoever is requiring those skills, you just want someone to get you without really knowing how to articulate that yourself.
Yeah.
I think when we started working together, I was probably in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And I had no sense of style, really. It wasn't something that I was really considering or even thinking about back in my hometown of Bewdley as a 17, 18-year-old. And especially going through the voice process as well, it was almost like, oh, well, whatever you think.
Yeah.
And I think when I started getting into my own artistry, relinquishing that control to other people because I didn't know what I wanted to be myself came
so hard.
And it was treacherous because I had people styling me in ways that I looked absolutely ridiculous. I had some amazing stylists, but they didn't quite get the vision.
Who you were as a person as well.
And I think what was so beautiful when you came on board was that it was you understood without me having to say where I was going, and there was a pride of creating from your point of view. I felt that there was so much pride in creating something for me that we could do together.
And I think it was kind of like create and respect as well, like who you were as a person and who you were as an artist, without trying to change you and adapt you to the trends that were going on within like the fashion world in terms of music and all of that, and kind of like trying to make you feel the best version of yourself. So when you were going on stage or on promo and stuff like that, you wouldn't be solely focused on what you were wearing and if you were feeling good in what you were wearing, because this has to be secondary. Like this is a second layer that you'll wear when you work, but it should never be like the first element of your job.
But I think in so many ways it is without it really being spoken about. It's being an artist is definitely about the music, but it's about how you brand yourself.
It's about your whole brand, yeah.
And how you look is very important,
It's
and how
key.
you present yourself is probably just as important as the music in a sense. You need to be a well-rounded package.
And I think the thing is, like, people always say like the first 3 seconds is when you make an impression on someone, and like unfortunately the first 3 seconds when you see an artist, most of the time it's like you see that person visually, so you hear it and you see it. It's not just, it's often not just radio, so you make up an opinion of that person straight away within those 3 seconds with what they're wearing, instead of just focusing on the music.
Yeah.
And there's that whole aspect that's super hard to deal with as probably an artist, and that you have to adapt to, because when you come on in a business, like when I started as a stylist, like I thought the only thing that matters is that I can do good styling. And then I discovered actually the only thing that really matters is that I can get the good clothes that will fit and that will, fit right. And you can make someone feel great. It's not just about, oh, I can do that. No, it's not just that,
Very early on, I was so anti that.
Yeah.
Because I think, and that's really what's changed, because I think I was so anti high end because I found it very elitist, and I'm from a,
and it is,
and it
is, like nowadays people say, hey, you you can get a great look from anywhere. And it's like the reality of it is like when you are, up to last penny and you want a new look, like if you get a full look from Chanel or if you get a full look from Primark, it's always going to look different. Like, and then you don't necessarily know how to go like to thrift stores or secondhand stores and find like the good bargains and stuff like that. And it's like, there is that whole thing also where people will be like, you should be wearing the look once and then wear something different every day. Like that whole thing is like, I mean, it's so destroying for a stylist, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think it's also very difficult because it's essentially keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And I think that's been very difficult to come to terms with. I think especially when I was younger and the budgets were smaller and it was kind of like, how do we make something look great without having all of the money that you need, $5,000 for a full outfit?
Yeah.
And I think that's been the beautiful thing with us is that, you've always been very forward thinking when it comes to supporting smaller brands and, designers that have come out. And I think one thing that is missing in fashion is that there's a disparity for people that don't have a lot of money to spend on clothes. There is a disparity between knowing that you can be fashionable and also, because for me it feels like it's either Selfridges or ASOS.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's a really damaging.
It's damaging, yeah.
And especially for young girls who feel like they need to have, a Gucci belt on, or because, and there was that time when everybody was wearing the double G's belt.
Yes.
And it was mainly because everybody was wearing it. You felt
like you had to have it.
Exactly. And because it was so overused, it was almost then in the fashion world seen as a no-no to wear a double G belt.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difficulty now, is because there isn't necessarily a platform like ASOS where they give multiple small business designers a platform for you to go. People haven't got the time to go to Isolated Heroes or, to smaller brands and pick and choose.
Yes.
Now that now it's either fast fashion is kind of like the only outlet for people who don't have a lot of money to spend on clothes.
And I think the problem in that, and that's really complicated, is it is essentially we live in a world where it's either fast fashion, where the way they produce it, where it's coming from, the materials, everything is bad because this is such a polluting business, like fashion is one of the most polluting businesses in the world. But there's also that problem where it's either that or the opposite. And I think where we are right now, there's this amazing Instagram account called Up Next Designer, where he started a few years ago, like putting up upcoming designers on his Instagram. So all he does is publish new designers. So he'll also mix in with, other more well-known designers, but stylists have started to get into it. And he now has like a massive followings, and like upcoming designers will like reach out to him, upcoming artists, like, I don't know, jewelry artists or everything will reach out to him and say, hey, can you feature me? And so people see him. But the problem of that is that if you don't have Instagram, if you don't have social media, there is nothing like that anywhere else. And fair enough, you have Depop, Vestiaire and all of that. But I'll tell you, as a stylist, for example, I've tried to work with Depop a lot, like buying Depop stuff for people. It doesn't work when you are in a rush, in a last minute. One time out of two, you don't receive the things on time. So one time out of two, you end up in Selfridges or on ASOS.
Yeah.
You work a lot with showrooms, but then the reality of it is like showrooms will not loan for everything or everyone.
Yeah.
So you have to have a budget. But I think one thing that I saw when we start working together, and I don't think it was necessarily so much about the budgets. It was more about what you wanted. And you were so like not designer focused that we were in a position where we were able to work with loads of upcoming people and also more established brands that are not necessarily thought as fashion in order to create a look. And we were able to create something like a DNA and your brand in terms of image without having the pressure of it being Louis Vuitton, Prada. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that made a big difference for me as a stylist, because you probably were one of the first people that I've worked with in terms of celebrity who told me, like, I don't care about that.
And I think that's the thing, though. I think consumerism generally is geared up for aspirational.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that I've found difficult within my kind of like artistry generally, is how to put myself out authentically, but to still have a sense of aspiration for people to be like, oh, I want to be like that. Oh, her songs are speaking to me. And in my personal life, I stay away from fast fashion.
Yeah.
And I buy pieces that are going to last me a while.
Yeah. And that you're going to be able to rewear as well.
Yeah.
And like that are versatile and that are adaptable to different situations and moments. And I think it's kind of like, because I've seen the evolution that you've had, and it's like you've kind of had like a fashion education in a way.
100%, yeah.
But you know, it's funny because you've had the fashion education of us working together and going through, you know, promo, video clips, red carpets and all of that the hard way. But then you've also had in your personal life the fashion education of what do I actually like, what do I actually wear in my personal life, and how do I want to present myself to the world, which is very different. I mean, obviously we had the whole pandemic in the middle where we all were tracksuits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just went and bought Pangaya like everybody else. But I think there's also that whole thing of like, we've kept a lot of like your stage looks and your festival looks and performance looks and stuff like that, which are in storage at the moment. And I've seen, like, for example, when we worked on all the festival and when we worked on your US tour, we kind of like reworked also pieces that you had worn before. And I think that's something that I haven't been able to do a lot with a lot of people, because you gave us that freedom. And I say us because it's me and Patricia and Zoe, you know, it's not only me, but you gave us that freedom of being able to take over old looks that you had worn, rework them and reuse them in a circular fashion way. And you know, that whole aspect of fashion is very forgotten about, and it's something that people are trying to push on, but it's hard. Like, it's not really happening. Like, people always want like something new and stuff like that. Yeah. And you've been doing that, which I find is really interesting.
I think it's important because actually now I think, you know, in the kind of pop star realm, I try and get a high-end piece or not.
Yeah.
And we do a look that isn't necessarily worth $5 or $6 grand.
Yeah.
And we keep it very low budget because I think it's really important to show people that, you know, it's obtainable.
It is.
For yourself.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't need to be an elitist. For me, I think it's important to represent those people who don't really see another option outside of ASOS. And I think that education is definitely lacking.
Yeah.
And I think if we had more people knowing that they could go to the smaller businesses.
Yes.
Or there was a platform. My favourite thing was Topshop, which is a dirty word. We don't love Philip Green.
Yeah, but I miss Topshop.
But for me, I used to love going to Oxford Circus and going to Topshop, not for the first 2 floors, but it was for the bottom floor.
Yes.
Because there were so many different designers and they all had a little podium and you could go around and choose a piece from each, and it was all reasonably priced. And I think that's what's missing in today's world of fashion, is that there isn't the support for smaller businesses.
No.
And smaller designers out there to get it to the masses.
Yeah.
Everybody's go-to is ASOS. And you're right, it's been made so easy that you can get premium delivery and it's delivered to your door between 10 and 12.
And it's awful because you don't even have to think about it. That's the awful thing. Like, it's, you know, we order a lot on matches.com and so it literally comes to you in 90 minutes. Can you do better, you know?
Yeah.
But then sometimes you have to think, there was this ring from this American designer and I really, really wanted it, but you had to wait like 3 months. And I was like, fuck, I really don't want to waste it, you know, that amount of time. And then in the end, I did. And now I wear that ring. And every time I look at it, I think, okay, I really took the time to think, do I want this?
Yeah.
And do I make the effort, you know? And it's like, because it's also an upcoming designer, it's not like someone famous, and it was quite pricey, because if you do small stock, small quantity, and you produce ethically and you have the right people working, then it's more expensive. So you're always going to end up paying more.
Yeah.
But I'm happy I did it. And every time I look at that piece, I think, hey, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I had patience.
I had patience for once.
But in a society that doesn't reward patience,
No.
I feel. You know, I think this kind of relates very nicely to the social media aspect of things, where people's attention spans are very small.
It's awful.
And I think, you know, that whole thing of like, worn it once, don't want to wear it again. You know, there was that whole thing back in the noughties about David Beckham, who would wear a shirt once and then send it to a charity shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people would be circling this charity shop because of all of the high-end stuff that was going in there.
Yeah.
And I think there is now, I think Vestiaire and Vinted and platforms like that are really great.
Yeah.
And Depop are really great, because I think it is encouraging people to buy secondhand and to, you know, look after a piece of clothing more than just it falling apart after a couple of washes.
But also, I don't know for you, but I have emotional attachment to pieces. You know, there's some pieces that, like, I don't know, I have like that black t-shirt that I have since like 10 years, and it's just black and it's simple, but I have an emotional attachment because it's been with me through that moment of my life where it was like my boyfriend's, well, my now husband's like t-shirt that he was wearing when we met, or some shit like that, you know. And it's like, I find that there are some pieces that I do want to cherish and keep. And I also find that there are some pieces I had when I was younger that I do not have anymore. And I go on Vinted or I go on Vestiaire because I want to look for them, because I remember that time and I want it back. You know?
And the trends come back
and
round
the trends,
as well.
yeah.
So it's interesting. I've had a very turbulent relationship with fashion, and I think when I first started in particular, I was very much like, I don't understand it. I don't get what all this is about. So I think it's a difficult one, and I find it very difficult when thinking back to where I've come from and like growing up, and my parents not having much money, and you know, moving to London and having to message my manager going, can I have £30 so I can buy myself a new pair of trousers for this thing. Yeah. I remember I
also remember when we started working, you were self-funding everything.
And because I'd been dropped and I was an independent artist. But even before that, I remember I lived in Cricklewood with a couple. I was living in their spare room, and I remember this first video I did with, it was the first time I'd met my best friend, Ryan Ashley. And we did a couple of covers for a YouTube thing, and I remember getting my stuff from the big Matalan that was next door. Yeah. And I remember feeling quite inferior then because it didn't represent this kind of shiny Luxo pop star thing that we get sold. Yeah. The glitz and glamour.
But also the reality is, like, everybody gets sold that, but the reality is, you show up super early, you spend 2 hours in hair and makeup, then we do all these fittings, we go through all these options, we retouch the clothes as well. Like, we have to work around the clothes. And it's not just, I think a lot of time people just think like the stylist just shows up with one dress and the artist just shows up, puts a little bit of mascara and goes on. And it's like, there's so much more of a process and a thought behind it. And there's such a team effort. Yeah. And it takes a village, and it doesn't take a village to make someone look good. It takes a village to make a good team that works well together. Yeah. That's the difference.
Yeah. And now I feel like I'm in a very lucky and settled place in my career where there's synergy between
everyone. Yeah.
And, you know, I walk into a room and I see the pride in what you guys are creating.
Yeah, we're always so proud. Yes.
And I think, you know, there are jobs out there that people just do for the money, or, you know, and I love the fact that I'm very proud in my work. You know, I love what I do. I'm very careful and calculated in the stuff that I write and the things that I put out and the shows that I do.
And it's very personal.
100%. And I think that in itself isn't enough without having you guys behind it to make it all look good. And I think one of the things that people also think is that you walk into the music industry and that's where it starts.
And it doesn't.
And it took me years.
Do you have an advice for someone who would be starting, for example, in the music industry, who just signed to a label or is about to sign to a label, an advice to that person about the glam team and the stylist? Because I feel like often when you sign to a label, they say, okay, that's going to be your styling, that's going to be your glam team. And then the stylist, like, you're going to have to wear that. Not necessarily because they think you're going to have to wear that, because the label had a call with you before and said, you should tell her she should wear that.
Yeah. I had a couple of situations like that in my first deal. But I'm also the kind of personality that
will not say yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And also if I don't feel comfortable, even if I go, yeah, I'll put it on, you can see it all over me that I'm not comfortable.
Yeah.
I think there is always there's always a knowledge, a gut feeling that you have, and I think everybody should always follow that.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of patience and a lot of self-reflection and looking at pictures.
And a lot of work from you
to go,
as well.
Yeah, and to go, I didn't look great in that. And that's funny because I didn't feel comfortable in that. So there's a correlation here between me not feeling good and actually the result not looking good.
Yeah.
That I need to pay attention here. And there's always going to be more people, more stylists, more hairstylists and makeup artists that are out there that are willing to, everybody just wants to do best for the artist.
Yeah.
And I think opening up that pool and being okay with shopping around is a really important thing, because once you find somebody, once you find your person,
you know it,
and you have to hold on to that person with everything that you have. And I think, you know, the proof here is the fact that I've worked with you and Wendy and now Brady for a number of years, and I feel very safe here.
Yeah, but I think we also feel the same. Like, we can walk in the room not having the best day and be able to talk about it and be able to exchange about it. Like, you know about my personal life, you know about their life, you know, and I think that doesn't necessarily happen often.
That it's kind of kept at arm's length a lot of the time, which is actually fine for certain people if that's how they work. I've just never been one of those people that...
I mean, also we ended up in places like, do you remember when we went to Vietnam?
Yes.
We were in that train station and we had to change.
And we had 2 hours sleep in 48 hours.
But it was an amazing trip. And it was an amazing video.
Yeah, I had a makeup artist, like, it was like dressing a corpse. I was fast asleep and she was like doing my full makeup. And then she like woke me up and I was just ready to go. And like that, there's so much dedication and passion that's involved. And if you don't have that and you don't see that in the team around you, then there is always going to be somebody that wants to give that passion to you elsewhere. And it's worth looking at. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. One thing I want to tell you is I have some of your fans who will reach out before red carpets or before big events, like before Jingle Bell Ball or Radio 1 big weekends and stuff like that. They will reach out and they will be like, I wonder what Becky's going to wear.
No
you know,
way.
Yes.
Really?
Yes, it's so
You've
cute.
never told me that before.
No, but I already had someone ask me, like, I'm already anticipating what she's going to wear for the Brits, what color is it going to be and stuff like that. And I thought what's really cute is you... through your career and through the time we've worked together, you've been able to touch fans in a very personal way and in a very different way, which also include that whole fashion world where they will then reach out to me and say, she was fucking fabulous, she was fierce, she made me feel great. Like for GBB, that mega look, like the bang look, and also the Dylan Joel look, like they always have something to say about it. But they have like, you know, there's always like some sort of, oh, that was really interesting because of this. That was really interesting because of that. And your entire team on stage looked amazing and everybody was together. When he did Ibiza Rocks, like everybody was together and it was like, you could feel it's like a family. And I think what's really beautiful here is...
really the fans and the public are the most important thing.
Because at the end of the day, there are the people that you want to touch the most.
And I don't have a career without them.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think, you know, and that I desperately, you know, this is just a kid that just desperately wants to be acknowledged, validated and heard.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's why I want to do it. But I want to do that with other people feeling like that's what they get as well.
Yes.
And I think that's really nice. I think that's why I do it.
Yeah.
But I also notice on the flip side of that, every year I don't get invited to Fashion Week at all.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting actually, and something I've never really spoken about, but I don't get invites.
There's like a very big cut within that fashion world, and it's very weird. And what's really weird for me is like some brands will be like, we really want to dress her for big events and stuff like that. But then they won't reach out for an invite. And I'm like, so what is that? Do you want to be associated with the artist but not the person? Or vice versa? What is it? You know, it's like, I sometimes wonder, is it that you have to go out and be like, actively, I want to do this, I want to do that? Or is it something else? I don't know. It's really weird. But I also like, I find it for myself. Like I will, because obviously as a stylist, before I used to go to all the shows and everything. And now I don't anymore because I find, I personally find that at first I don't really have time because I'm always working. But also I see that collection 50 fucking thousand times on Vogue.com after when I choose. And so then they stop inviting me because they're like, you don't show up anyway. And I'm like, but I kind of want to be invited.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I want to have the choice of saying yes or no. And I want to be part of that fashion world, but at the same time, I don't. But I don't want to be like, I don't want them to make me feel like, oh, you know, you're not. What's cool anyway? What's a sample size? And a fucking sample size. How a sample size, depending on the brand, can be a size 4 or a size 10, and how it makes you feel at the end of the day. And how some brands will be like, well, I can't loan for you because you're not a sample size. I'm like, first off, it's not that. It's like, your sample size would literally not fit a 12-year-old. So, and you don't want to touch a 12-year-old. And
unless you're Balenciaga.
Unless you're Balenciaga, yeah. But there's that whole aspect of like, the clothes should adapt to you. You shouldn't adapt to the clothes the same way like, you should wear the look shouldn't wear you. And I feel like that's a big thing in fashion. And that's another like elitistic thing in fashion where, you know, we should always be able to dress however we want to without thinking, well, am I too fat for this? Am I too skinny for that? What are people going to say about this? I mean, I've got a friend who asked me a week ago if I was pregnant because I was bloated and I was like, no, I'm not pregnant.
Where do people get?
Yeah, you know, like, I'm not pregnant. And she was like, are you sure? Because, you know, you already have your first kid and, you know, he's 3.5. And I'm like, no, I'm sure.
And it's none of your fucking business.
It's none of your fucking business, exactly. But it's like, there's a whole aspect of body positivity going on in the world right now. And on the side of that, there's a whole aspect of like negativity about that entire size situation and that entire, you know, that's really hard as well.
I definitely feel like fatism is
a thing,
just like the hugest thing in fashion, and I think I've always felt that I've been quite privileged in the fact that I'm not bigger than a size 12, you know, and and
do you 90% of the time you fit in the sample size without having to do a retouch on it.
And I've always felt very lucky about that.
Yeah.
Because it's made our job a lot easier. You know, there has been many, many times where I've felt too fat to be a pop star at a size 10.
It's so bad, though. It's so sad.
And, you know, I've felt pressures of that, but then had to quickly remind myself, this is not something I'm adding to my list of fucking stresses.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not now gonna, and actually I'll be doing myself a disservice because self-love is the main thing here for everybody. And that's what I want to radiate, and that's what I want to tell other people. I think the Euros, for example, when I sang the national anthem and did like the opening set.
And it was wild.
For the Lionesses.
That moment was wild.
And if I wasn't getting comments about not wearing enough, which, you know, people aren't used to seeing women with stomachs.
Yeah.
And I think it's massively frowned upon. I think, you know, I did a recent Instagram post where I think I lost about 600 plus followers because I said that, yes, I'm a little thick at the moment. I've been enjoying eating and enjoying myself on holiday. And people were popping off in the comments being like, how dare you call yourself that? So my argument was, well, if I don't mention it, people ask me if I'm pregnant. And if I do mention it, you tell me off for talking about it. So firstly, there's a whole discourse about people talk about anybody having an opinion over their own body, it being negative when it doesn't need to.
Yeah, and like, expressing it.
Yeah, me gaining a little bit of weight is... And me talking about it to other people and society is seen as negative. But to me, I think it's beautiful.
Yes, of course.
And I think a lot of people don't see that. And I think fashion and media definitely perpetuate this idea that bigger,
size,
curvier women equals fat.
Yeah, yeah.
And... you know, and the fashion industry do not cater towards unhealthy people.
Yeah.
Yet somebody who's a size 0 and anorexic
is unhealthy.
Has a whole range of clothes available for them.
Yeah.
So it's fucked.
It's fucked. But you know what I think? I think that there's a funny side of that because I've seen, obviously, like when I started styling, there was no social media. When I started styling and Instagram came about, like there was no problem of you posting a picture and getting 0 likes or 0 comments. It wasn't a problem. You were not getting traumatized about it and you were not like scrolling and looking, oh my God, like...
Look at all this other person with all these likes on their phone.
Exactly. Yeah. And now like obviously TikTok came about and I find such a big difference in between TikTok and Instagram because I can see that on Instagram, everything has to be super curated. And I'm talking in terms of fashion and looks, like you have to be... you know, some sort of picture where you like have a super look and you have your makeup and everything will do a lot of likes, and something more natural and more like a moment in my life where I actually feel great and I'm showing off about it because I want to show people like the real me will do less good about it. But then I'll go on TikTok, and on TikTok, something that's more like polished and stuff will not do as well. But what will do better is me just speaking to someone about like my personal experience or my opinion about things and stuff like that. And I feel like this is also a moment where I'm like, my God, like I don't even know what to say, how to say it, who to say it to, and like who are all these people? You know, it's like, and it's really scary. And at the same time, I feel like now we're in a position where you can talk direct to people so much more and you can touch people so much more through such a personal way, which bypasses completely the high fashion press. Yeah.
It's been interesting to watch actually because I obviously have quite a volatile relationship with TikTok and social media generally, especially TikTok. But watching you begin your journey into it and seeing how... kind of easy it's been for you to create content and not to really overthink it has been really nice to see. How has your journey through TikTok in particular been for you?
First off, I found people were less mean on TikTok than they were on Instagram.
Interesting.
And I found people around me that I know were more judgmental about TikTok that they were about Instagram. And I found a lot of people were like, oh, you're selling your soul because you're talking through an app and stuff like that. When first off, I'm not. I'm trying to find a nice and enjoyable way of doing social media. I'm trying to switch that whole social media aspect into something positive because I find social media quite stressful and hurtful at times, you know, like that whole thing can be really hard. Like sometimes I'm like, I need a break from social media because it's just too much. But I find that since I've decided that actually if people like me or don't like me and like or don't like what I'm putting on social media is not my problem, it's their problem, because in a way someone who will come on my social and hate on me is a direct reflection of how they feel about themselves because they don't know me.
Yeah.
And they know who I am on social media, but they don't know what I'm going through my life and what I've done today and all of that.
Yeah.
So I've kind of like detached from it. But I'll tell you one thing, I found that I was a really because I'm a behind the scene person. Like I'm usually I used to be extremely private about everything. Like there's a lot of people who didn't know I had a child, loads of people who still don't know I have a kid. Like I hid my pregnancy for a while, and like I try to keep my personal life really private in general. And so I've kind of like managed to open up in a positive way about it, and it's helped me as a person understand myself better and understand why I was feeling so attacked when I was getting hate on socials, or why I was feeling so good when I was getting on the love on socials, but where actually it didn't make a difference for me in my real life.
How have you found it through using it as a tool for styling?
So I find a lot of inspiration on social media, like shit ton of inspiration. I find a lot of new designers and upcoming people on social media, which I find is really interesting. I found assistants through social media. I found new brands. I found new photographers. Like I think social media nowadays is kind of like your portfolio as a creative.
Yeah.
And I think there's a very strong and probably relatable for a lot of people. I get a lot of inspiration from it. I get a lot of solutions through it. Like if you go on TikTok, you get like styling hacks, and you get like, how like stupid stuff, but that will help you in your everyday life. So I found it's a great tool, but it's a great tool that you have to use with caution.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Totally agree with that.
But I found that there's also what I've seen, because it's funny, because I will post things, and when I post things about you, I will also, see the response and how people are towards you and everything. And I have found that, especially since last year, and I've seen that with like the last year campaign with the Brits and stuff like that, I found really beautiful how people will like get together behind someone and root for someone and want that person to do well. And that applies to you, but that also applies to a lot of other people that I see on social media, how like there is a lot of hate, but there's also that other side of like people really want you to win, and they really want you to, succeed in life and be happy. And they really look up to what you're doing and what you do. And I think that is the positive side of it.
Yeah. See, I have to quite shade myself from negative comments, because I actually think it's worse on TikTok than it is on
Really?
Gram.
Yeah.
I think you're laid quite bare on Instagram comments. But on TikTok, it feels like it's a free-for-all.
Yeah.
So I kind of find that quite difficult.
Yeah.
And also to put myself out there generally. But as you say, I think it's a tool to use in the way that you see fit.
Yeah.
But it's getting used to using that tool first to see how it works.
But like I think, first off, I think there's moments where it's like it's really beautiful, like seeing everybody do that dance of remember and stuff like that. Like that's a funny one, and that's that's a positive thing. But I think there is loads of videos that I love on you about you on social media, and that like moments that we filmed. This like you've given access to your fans of like special behind the scenes moment when you're getting ready, or when you're about to go on a red carpet, or how you feel about some sort of look or some sort of moment and stuff, and you give them access to that, and it's like kind of like an insight on like your everyday work life.
Yeah.
Like I know, like when we chatted with Wendy, for example, she was like, oh my God, I just went to do Becky's makeup and there was no time, so we did it in the studio, and she was writing a song and I had no idea about this, and now I know a little bit about it. But she was like, it was so interesting because that's a side of her job that I don't know.
It is very separate.
Yeah.
It is very separate. I think, and writing music is something that I don't attach to being this pop star.
But it's funny because it's because of that you are a pop star.
And I think in regards to how I dress in the studio, I look like shit most of the time. And actually, I think I've come to this year I came to a bit of a conclusion this year that I must start dressing well wherever I go. Because, like, firstly, it makes me feel good. And secondly, you never really know where you're going to end up.
No.
And I think I'd capture a lot more in the studio if I felt like I looked better.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
So the way, I mean, it's true that the way you dress will influence your mood 100%, always. But it's, that's an interesting, like, take on fashion as well, you know, like when you're working.
There's times that I will really go for it.
Yeah.
But generally in the studio, usually your studio looks like shit. Everybody else in the studio is dressing like a normal person.
But it's funny because that's where magic really happens.
For me, the more comfortable I am in the studio, the more I can touch my face and rub my eyes and, you know, tap my head when I'm thinking of some lyrics and melodies and stuff. And to be sat, you know, in a comfortable pair of trackies and stuff is
important.
Is really important because I'm not thinking about, God, these jeans are really uncomfortable. And, oh, God, I need to take those shoes off. Because the heel's too high to go and sing. And, oh, fucking hell, I hope my top isn't coming too low because I'm writing with two men and I just don't want them to feel uncomfortable. And, like, to eliminate that frees up ideas to come into the studio and to write songs. So it's interesting because I very much pick and choose between, and I call it my Clark Kent versus my Superman.
Yes.
You know, I feel like when I'm with you guys and I'm getting ready and getting dressed up, it's my Superman outfit. And there's so many times that I'll come back into the dressing room when everything's done and I'm like, time to get back into my Clark Kent.
But so if you had to wear one look for the rest of your life, what would it be then if it had to adapt to like Clark and Superman?
I'm trying to think. You know what? Interesting. Especially last year, there were so many incredible looks.
Yeah.
I really loved the blue velvet jumpsuit that I wore for Los. Say the
40.
Word.
Los 40.
French and Spanish speaking over here. That I thought was a really good blend between what I would probably wear for a date night as well as wearing it on stage to perform with David Guetta.
Yeah.
You know, and I walked out of that room thinking this is a really lovely blend.
Yeah.
Of Clark and Superman.
You know, I sat down at the end of the year and I was like trying to do the recap of how many looks we've made in the year, and I stopped at 55 because I couldn't do
Shut
more.
up.
Yeah.
We've done 55 looks.
We've done more. I just had to stop because if you think of the amount, I mean, Kris Jenner over here will know.
Kris Jenner being Amanda Barker, who is my right-hand woman.
I call her Kris Jenner because she's such a boss. And it's really funny because then people think that I actually know and talk to Kris Jenner on a daily basis. Because between the looks that we've done for stage and the looks that we've done for promo and, you know, and then we had the amazing TV show and all of that, it's just like...
The Ibiza Rocks residency, 6 dates.
And we're going to do... Yes, we have to do something absolutely over the top for that.
And that was really good because... You know, I was just thinking about that and thinking about the use with the kind of like the jackalope stuff. Mm-hmm. And like even the Royal Variety with Dylan Joel and
Bang.
You know, yeah. Bang I'd heard of, but through the drag community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Dylan Joel and Jackalope, these are people I'd never heard of.
And you know how I found Jackalope? Actually, I found Jackalope on Instagram. I found Jackalope on Instagram because I found it through, like, I was on this account where there's, like, references, images of, like, art and not fashion. Right. And there was a close-up of a Jackalope bodysuit and they were tagged. No way. I went on there and then we did a whole research to find the showroom. And the showroom is in LA. And I wrote and I was like, hey. And then... they let me hold on to the look for so long for you for the Euros because I said we have the perfect moment for it. You just have to be patient because it's not yet, but we know we want to wear that already.
Yeah. That whole look was a vibe with the little kind of like chemise thing, the little tie.
And I think one thing also that I love of us working together is you enable me and let me run free, wild and crazy in terms of looks, and you let me do my own little customs, and you let me like modify the clothes, and you also are like, you know, I'm like, hey, I've got this crazy thing coming from LA, or I've got this crazy thing coming from Dalston, and like you will never look at it differently. You're like, yeah, fine.
Oh
like,
my God.
Let's try anything. Yeah.
Because a good piece of clothing is a good piece of clothing.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you look good and it feels good on,
Yeah.
and you know as soon as you put it on as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most beautiful thing, and it keeps things very quick. You know, when you turn up with a rail, and then I'm like, I look through and I'm like, yeah, want to try this, want to try that, want to try this, and it's just.
Do you remember that?
Oh God.
I just found it in one of the luggages.
Oh, we wore this for. This wasn't one of the Love Island options. Was this one of the Love Island options?
It was one of the Love Island options, and then we found that amazing flory dress.
Yeah.
And so this turned out to be a promo outfit for the years after.
Yes, you're right.
It's
and I remember
wild.
going, can I keep this? Because it's David Comer and it's probably fucking really expensive. Is the label covering this? Or... But I think that's the nicest thing is that, you know, this I love as well. That I
and
think
this
we wore for Pride.
We wore for Pride, but we haven't worn like the full thing. So that's why we still have it.
And I think that's what I like is the balance between being super high end and being accessible for, you know, my friends back at home.
Yeah. And this is also menswear.
This pink shirt?
No, this one, this jacket.
Oh, I see.
It's menswear.
I might have to give it to my boyfriend.
I mean, Charlie would look.
He'd look so good in it.
Oh my God. I think one thing we should kind of like talk about the Brits a little bit more.
The Brits is a really interesting one, I think, for me, because I get so excited about what I'm going to wear.
Because I get so stressed about what you're going to wear.
And I think it was interesting because, I mean, last year was quite stressful because we went to the Alberta Ferretti showroom and we were trying stuff on. And I even remember before walking out being like, Adele, I don't know whether this is the one.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually it turned out that it totally was.
And it was something that was, it was so you, and at the same time it was so different that what you had worn. And I think we were in that mindset where we were like, we want to have like a killer designer with a killer design, but we don't want to sell out to the designer.
Just because we want to work with them.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, you know, this year I'm so excited because I think it's the ASOS man.
It's always the ASOS men here, though.
We don't use ASOS here. Yeah, just put all those bags over there in the corner. Thank you.
Do you know I'm banned from Net-a-Porter?
Why?
Because I ordered too much and returned too much.
Oh my God. I love that. It's like being banned from the local Weatherspoons, that is. That's a badge of honour.
They called me at 5 a.m. when we were in LA with Shade on a video. Hey, this is the customer service from Net-a-Porter. It's just to kindly let you know that we've terminated your account and that you will not be able to open a new account. And I was like, but why?
Do they not like it when you send it back?
No. But the problem is when you order online, you could be making massive, massive orders and nothing fits. You have to try it on.
Oh,
so we were making massive orders, but we were only using very little things.
Right. And they were like, this bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think the process that we go through for the Brits is quite different because, especially this year, because we're not thinking about what is the designer and everything is how do you want to feel and what do you want to look like.
And I have such a better understanding now of what kind of thing I want to be dressed in, and it just makes everything a lot easier to be like, look, I found this, can we get it?
Yeah.
and try it on. But I think that's the thing with the Brits. There's literally, there isn't really...
There's no dress code. Everybody comes dressed like
Yeah.
one thing and it's opposite.
Yeah, there was all sorts last year as well. And, you know, last year was so good because I walked around in my pretty outfit with my hair and my makeup done, feeling like I deserved a place.
Yeah, but also like that whole moment, I think everybody was like waiting for that moment of like Pete and David together announcing that you won. It was such a beautiful moment because it was
lovely.
like these are people that you've worked with for a while and that you really have like a relationship with, and that you've done incredible, you know, moments in terms of concerts or creating music together. And I felt like, well, that's a real authentic Brit moment. That's not, you know, like...
It felt so... Last year was so amazing. I think one thing I'm really looking forward to, you know, regardless of whether it happens at the Brits this year or not, but I'm really excited to go back out on tour and spend an hour after every show and meet people.
Yeah.
Because I've been so afraid of doing that for so long because of social anxiety and, you know, having certain neurodivergent problems that mean that I kind of shy away from meeting people who are coming out and showing up for me. And I think, you know, I'm so excited to see people this year. I'm so excited to actually spend time being with people on my own show and seeing them after and having that connection with people again, because I fucking miss it. And it means so much to me to have a community of people that, you know, see the bigger picture here. Like, I'm trying to create a safe space for everybody, no matter what background or race or gender or sexuality or, you know, beliefs. I think this is a really important thing to do that's kind of bigger than me just putting out tunes. I want to create a space for people to really have an amazing fucking time and to meet people and to spread more love in the world, which is what we need, as cliched as that is. We're doing something good here and we're a proper fucking team, and
yes, we are.
I love us.
I love us too. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited for the whole process that's going to go through the Brits prep. And I'm also really excited for a 2023 that's going to be absolutely mental. And
album 2, babe.
Yes, I can't wait.
Well, thank you so much. And you've got a lovely podcast here. So well done, Adele.
Thank you so much. Mwah.